All right, so for today's class, I have a few more techniques that I'm going to speak about. So, this is like what I'm trying to do in last class and this class is introduce you to the behavior of the medium. Once you understand all that the medium can do, then you can employ the different techniques to paint whatever we want to paint. So from next week's class onwards, we are going to start using these techniques, but I've broken these down into just one technique at a time. Usually in a painting, we will variably use all of these in different places. They will be overlapping. So it's very organic. It's not going to be as structured as we make it right now. But in the beginning, if we do a wash and a glaze and some detailing, one here, one there, and whatever, it becomes overwhelming. So doing a little bit of this practice, I have found, at least assures you of just some expectation, a realistic expectation when we are making the painting. So today we are going to do a few techniques. We will be doing a multi-color wash. Usually the washes we do are not just one single color. They can be in many different colors. Then we are going to do a blending technique. So while washes are base coat or sometimes even in between coats, they are usually over large areas. But you can't use the same technique if you want to do a blending exercise in a smaller area, because obviously, how can you make that fluid medium flow over a small area? So we will do blending with a slightly less watery medium. Then we are going to do another couple of wet on wet techniques. This comes down to detailing after you have finished the wash. So while the first wet on wet that we attempted last week was to establish a base layer, like we made the back of a forest and then we made some detailing in that, this time we are going to use the wet on wet as part of one layer below the line detail. And time permitting, we will do something called negative painting also. This is again another part of detailing. So once these three techniques, the multicolor wash, the blending, and the wet on wet detail techniques are done, we can then do different types of detailing even when we are doing regular projects. Like if we take on a flower next week, I can show you the detailing even at that point. It's not a big deal. But the earlier ones, it's good to know and practice just in isolation. So for the the multicolor wash, again, we are going to use a big fat brush. And this time I'm going to give you again a composition on the page so you're not completely lost. We will start off with washes on one side, the blending on another side, and the wet on wet details on one side. And then we will experiment with all of them together in one piece. And again, time permitting, in that we will also try to do some, what is this, negative painting. But I'm not pushing to finish all of this in one class. If the pace matches, it's great. If it doesn't, if you have problems, none of these techniques are something that we are going to master in today's class. Okay, so if there are people who feel you need to do more, please do more in class itself so that I can sort your issues. And those who are moving faster, you can make more of the same. It would still be practice for all of us. All right. So for the multicolor washes, we are going to use this opportunity to clean out our palettes. Here's one thing that you'll also notice about watercolor artists, that many times the palette is not washed. You will have huge palettes, all the colors are kept in that. I don't know whether it is just being attached to color, but for me, I sometimes use these colors in between or sometimes even in the edges to create some subtle shadows which are there in the picture for depth and dimension, but are never shades that you need to make very specifically. Oh, yeah, one more thing we had to do is glazing. I'd better write that down. Alright, so the first one is a multicolor wash. For this, we will make a rectangle about an inch or inch and a half by 2 to 3 inches. So about half the page, not too large. Now using a large brush like a number 9 to 12, we are going to create a big puddle of color. I'm just hydrating the colors that I have in the palette so that I just consume all of this and then I can just wipe it off and clean my palette. And use two contrasting colors, at least to some extent contrasting. So I will use a blue and let's say burnt sienna. Now we are not using too much pigment. We want the pigment to be light. It's just going to tint the paper. Usually washes are fairly translucent. And the reason for that is they just prepare the background for the next colors or the next elements to come in. If these washes are too dark, then you won't be able to paint anything on top of it that would be visible. Even at, I think at 100% color is when your watercolor just cannot take on any new shades. But we want to avoid that till the last layer. So how do you know what is the right amount of pigment? It's as simple and logical as you can feel uh, it might be. When you are mixing this color, just move the color in the palette to see how it looks against the white of the palette. This is more or less the shade that you will get, not this one, not where the color has ballooned up and concentrated because of the water. This will not be what it looks like. This is more or less what it's going to look like on paper and even lighter. But if I were to take the same color in a concentrated form, I've not added too much water, so whatever pigment I have taken has spread on this area and it's not moving. This would be the final shade. Now this is not a wash consistency, this is pretty dry and it can be used for detailing later, but this moves. And if I can imagine a single layer of this color, it's about this dark, that's how dark it's going to be. Now while I'm making the wash, I would like all of you to just observe first. Don't paint with me, we will have enough time to paint, but there are a few nuances of how to hold the brush, how the brush is moving and all of that which I cannot describe word for word. So it's better that you just observe this. It's just going to take a minute because after all it's just a wash. So the things to keep in mind are consistency of paint, size of brush, quantity of the medium. So here I will ask you to keep in mind that when you are making this wash, don't wait for the brush to dry completely. Make one or two lines and go back and reload the brush. The brush needs to have a nice full tank, if I may. Then we have the angle of paper or surface to allow the paint to flow. So if your wash is not looking like it's smooth and the colors have blended, something over here might need to change. It's as simple as that. Alright, so here goes. I am loading my brush. So fully loaded brush looks nice and bulbous at the tip. And you start off, as soon as you put your brush to paper, you will be able to tell whether or not your paint is wet enough. If you feel a slight resistance, that means that it probably needs more water. I keep loading after almost every stroke because I'm sitting under a fan and I don't want this to dry too quickly. Now, as I'm coming to about 2/3, I'm not loading the brush here because I want to blend a second color in this. I'm reducing the paint but not completely zero. The book is at an angle. Wash and wipe the brush, plunge it into the next color, and then just introduce that color in the mix. Now wash and wipe your brush again and load pure color, and this time make the book a little flat so that you don't get a bleed of the first color into the second color. You want to arrest the flow of the first color and just pull the second color down. Now I have this extra paint here which can flow back if my book sits flat. But if it is upright at this point, then this will just collect over here while everything dries and create a cloud. If it is not flowing back, I'll wipe my brush and just pick up this color till I feel that it matches. Don't pick it up fully because then you leave a white patch here. Okay, so this is how you blend these colors. Now I'll just go over it one more time. As you come to about 1/3 the way down, do not load your brush again. Just allow the same medium to go further so that it reduces in quantity. Otherwise, you will get too many of these drips. And then before it completely dries, introduce the second color and continue painting the exact same way, holding the brush a little flat like that, not with the tip. And as soon as you introduce the second color, change your tilt a little bit, make it slightly flatter so you don't get these bleeds running down. I know it's too much instruction. You may remember a few things, you may not remember a few things. Just let it happen the way it happens. At any point you're doing watercolor, you have to just say, okay, I have to expect the unexpected, and then I have to see how I can make the unexpected work. Okay, are you done? You should be done by now. If you're painting too much beyond this, you're probably overdoing. All right, now we're just going to let this dry, because as it dries, it changes its look. So, what you see in watercolor when things are wet look very different once they start drying. So, while this is drying, we are going to go on to the two wet on wet techniques.
Ma'am, would it be possible for
Yes.
you to include your palette also in the screen? When you lift the paint, we can see that also. What?
Uh, yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do it this way now. Alright, so the next one is the wet on wet detail. Alright, now for this technique, we are going to use two brushes. You will use a large brush like this and a medium sized brush like a 4 to 7 size brush. We are going to hydrate our paint just a little bit, because we need a very concentrated consistency and medium at this point.
What is the size of the other brush, Aditi? You said 4 to 7 and the other one?
This is my 9 number brush, but you
9.
can use
Okay.
9, 10, 12,
Yeah.
any.
Okay.
The reason I'm using two brushes over here is so that we conserve paint and you don't get confused about which to use for the detailing. It will become clear as I make this for you. So I just again want you to observe this while your paint is getting wet. Now I'm going to make a little puddle of color, and then I'm going to drag this color out to create different shapes. So one brush has got the pigment, the other brush is just going to be wetted, not totally wet like a wash consistency, but it will be damp. I will activate the color from one side, pull it out, then wet the brush again and then drag it further. So I want you to see this, don't do it with me, just observe. I am loading a lot of concentrated medium over here with my fat brush, and then with my wet brush a little less than, okay, here's, if this is fully loaded, just reduce this a little bit, but I'm not dabbing it on my rag, and then holding it flat so that the water doesn't go inside the well. I'm pulling the color outward, so I can control the amount of paint I can pull out if my brush is held flat, sorry. Same thing again, holding it flat, just pull this out quickly enough, and also rotate your work. Oops, too much paint, too much water. So holding the brush flat and pressing it just a little bit will prevent the water in here from going into the center and making the center color so wet that by the time you drag it outward, all that paint starts coming to the into the petal.
But every time you damp the brush, right? You put the brush in water.
Yes, because every time I make the petal, the water from the brush itself is going onto the paper and the brush is getting dry. Okay, cool. All right.
Aditi, I have a question.
Yeah.
I was working on that chart you had given last time, right? The color.
Huh.
I noticed something, and it's the same thing has happened again here.
Huh.
You see grains below?
1 second, let me
I
see.
don't know if you can see, but the green has like a grainy feel. And
Let me just pin this. Okay. Um, I think the background is blurred, Rachna. Can you change your background?
Ginger, maybe I can just send a photo to you.
I'll just send a photo, then I can also share it, and I can speak with about it in detail then.
Yeah, I'm just sharing it with
Yeah.
you. And that happened in that chart as well. I'm not sure why. And I don't know whether it's because it's really old palette, I mean, paint box or.
Okay. Let's see. So this technique I call the drag, because obviously we're dragging paint. I don't think this is like a legitimate technique. This is just some word that I have given so that I know what we're talking about. Okay. Let me share a picture of your image. Yeah, so this grain uh, on the right side you see, right? On the left you don't see that
Yeah,
grain.
more on the right, correct.
Yeah. So it could be two things. One is it is just leftover pigment that's settled, and this is not bad or wrong. There are certain pigments that behave like that.
Mm-hmm.
You would have maybe an ultramarine blue, which will also do this. It leaves a granular pigment residue.
Okay.
The other thing could be, but I don't think it's possible in this case, it could be paper itself. So if you have erased, or if the paper is a little damaged, the surface, then that also sometimes looks like this, because obviously as the uh, pigment bits go and settle down on the paper, they are obstructed by the structure of the paper itself, the paper surface, and then they sit unevenly.
It's 8 o'clock.
Okay.
I don't think that your paper you erased much, because I would have been able to see some evidence on the side. But so this is just the nature of this particular pigment.
Okay.
Now, if we want to get rid of this, ek to you don't need to, because this is not going to be visible. Often these kinds of things happen, but watercolor is not a medium that you want to or you expect to sit flat any case. So you are going to layer it over and over,
Okay.
and that layering is going to camouflage all of this. So you don't have to worry about it.
Actually, now that it's dried, that graininess has disappeared, but there's a bulge on the paper, so I don't know whether it's too much water. It's
No,
fine.
no, no, no. That bulge will come because we're using a thinner paper, and eventually that bulge also settles.
Flatten out. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So after this, we will do the drop method. So in this now we are reversing the brushes. We are going to use, we are going to use the thin brush to first create a small shape. So the same floral shape that we made, we are going to make a small shape here. And for this, you don't need to wash the brush also. If there's a little bit of pigment in this, it's fine. But we are going to keep this a little wet. Now, there are ranges of wet also. A wet where you put so much water that the water on the paper also flows everywhere, or it's slightly damp with a little bit of excess water that will allow flow. because now we are going to take the same concentrated color. This is the second brush again. Make the color a little wet, maybe even a little wetter than before, and drop it strategically in the places where you want that color to spread. Now here is a test of patience. This color will take some time to flow, and the test is to not try to manipulate it. You can keep dropping color in different places, but don't be in a rush to make the color behave the way you want to, sit wherever you want to. So this is, I feel, the superpower of watercolor. Being able to flow through liquid medium. It does amazing things. In the beginning, we don't see this as a superpower. It just annoys us a lot because we have a certain expectation. And if your paint doesn't behave in the manner that you expect it to, you just get frustrated. But if you put that aside and you just observe what the paint is doing, while you were waiting for the paint to make a flower for you, it might possibly make a butterfly. And that is something that you would not be able to create consciously even.
Aditi, the first wash that you did, just the plain water, that was, I missed seeing that part, that was in the shape of the flower only, right? I mean, just where you put water before you put the paint in.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, everyone done? Now don't mess with it, just let it dry. And while this is drying, we will go to the next technique, which is the blending technique. So for blending, we are going to make a shape. Now here's some instruction about composition. When you have things like these, you have boxes, you have text, you have organic elements like that, try to see that your boxes are all aligned. It just makes your pages look a lot better. And I know there are people who, especially artists who I don't know, because they probably don't have a graphic design background, have very shoddy compositions when it comes to making practice sheets. And for me, shoddy compositions just will give me sleepless nights. So I have made this rectangle. I want you to just watch me finish this before you start drawing, because I'm going to do more things here. And then I'm going to divide this rectangle in half. I need this space to be at least the thickness of your finger when it is pressed, not too thin. And then I am going to divide this into triangles. Here's another technique of dividing space. When you start making these triangles, you want the triangle to finish either on the top or the bottom corner. You don't want to finish somewhere in between. So if you're going to start from one side, how are you going to ensure that it's going to end either on the top or bottom? We are not asking for equal triangles. So as you make these triangles, you start observing how much space you need for them. And when you come closer and closer, you can start visualizing how much space is going to be consumed by the end. And you can manipulate the size of your triangles so that you can finish in one part or another. So my triangles may not be equal, but they are even. They're breaking the space evenly. In the bottom, we have to just reverse this. And that's very easy to do because now you know where to take the line up to. Now it doesn't matter whether you make 5 of these, 10 of these. We just have to make a structure like that, and you can also extend it later if you want to. I need small enough places to show you blending. So this size triangle, which if you compare it to my finger, is about the size of my top flange of my finger, is good enough. So this is something that I think I should just introduce all of you to at this point. So while on the one hand we practice a lot of art, you want to sketch, you want to paint, and you have a whole lot of sketchbooks and all, there is something about aesthetics that permeates your entire life throughout, whatever you're doing. And by that I mean even things like when you are in the kitchen and you're making tea or something, how you keep a cup on a saucer and a spoon next to that is also aesthetics. You don't have to do it for anyone else other than for yourself. Sometimes it is just logical. Like when you are serving tea to somebody, you turn the cup so that the handle is on their right. So it's easier for them to pick up. So they don't have to go through all of these gymnastics just to pick up a cup of tea. But that is being thoughtful, and also it adds to your awareness and your attention to detail. So at the end of the day, it's about training your brain to notice the detail to the extreme limit. And we are sadly, I feel, at least in Pune, I'm in a city where detail is the last thing people are going to think about. They just get stuff done the quickest they can, and we get the shoddiest output of everything. Literally, from kids who are doing their homework, they'll just finish it off. There's hardly anything that they put for themselves just out of their own need to do more. And of course, as they progress, they just see the adults around also mostly doing the same thing. Just get it done. Forget it. Who cares? So we have to reverse that. So even if we see this around, it doesn't matter who else cares. You need to care. So when I have class at home and I have kids coming over, I tell all of them that you have to make sure that your shoes are in one line. It's not a big ask. You come first, you put your shoes first, but you don't just leave them on the door and then the next person has to trample over them. So by the end of it, the whole neighborhood knows that there is some class happening over here because we've got this heap of footwear. It's just so ridiculous. And the kids still haven't registered it. It takes me about 3 or 4 weeks of classes for them to know, because I stop class, I take them all out and I make them put them in line. Then there are days when I'll also tell them, put them in chronological order, which helps me to tell them that there is another way that you can increase your detail or attention to detail. So first come the light colors, then come the dark colors, and so on and so forth. And we can do this all around us. When you have a bookshelf, there are so many colors on books, but we usually put them pretty randomly, or if you want to put them according to a topic, then you'll put them that way. But there are colors, and if the topic is not really important and if that order is not really important, the color is the first thing you see. Take the time, take all the books out and start putting them in a harmonious color form, or make shelves which have only grays or only whites or only reds, and see how many different shades they are, so that every time you pass there is something that your brain responds to. Sometimes it is books, sometimes it's color, sometimes it's just form. So how you place your paintings. Like I've got a few post-its over here. Every time a new post-it comes onto that place, I have to change the order, because to me that composition also must make me feel good. Now this is a very intangible subject. It's very ephemeral, and from day to day it can change. Today something you like some color a lot, and tomorrow you're introduced to another color, and these two don't meet. So then something has to change. So you have to be open and aware to this from an aesthetic absorption point of view. And literally start simple. I do this even in stores now. I've gone to another level altogether. If I find that there are some unharmonious colors of towels or something together, I'll take one out and put it in another place, just because it should be like that. Keep things in a nice aesthetic order in the world. It's not my responsibility, but I just enjoy doing it so much that I do it anyway. I'll straighten things in corners. If I have to keep my, like somebody asked me right now to keep my palette on the book, it can't just be left like that. It has to be at the angle that will be most aesthetic to the next topic that I'm going to make over there. So I want you to start responding to that. I don't expect that you will be able to know this is right, but you will be able to feel that it may be better. You will be able to know that if I just turn this way, maybe let me see how it looks. And little by little, you will start responding very, very organically to that output. Right now, it won't matter to you when you're painting to just test your color in the corner of the paper and go ahead and paint what is on the main paper. But that thing that's there in the corner is in your field of vision. And that will always make your painting look a little less than its potential. Even if that painting turns out to be horrible, it would still have a nice frame, it would be clean, and that is important for your overall aesthetic experience. And it's the quickest way of becoming better at art. Nobody tells you this, but it's so quick because you don't have to do half the work. You just have to be open to that absorption and that experience. Okay, so let's try this out as we go along. So the next one just happens to have a lot of color in this, and I'm not going to ask you to doctor your colors right now, but I want you to be able to respond to them. Some colors are going to come next to other colors. I want you to see what kind of effect it creates for you as a feeling. It could be neutral, or it could be, sometimes you will just see the highs and you'll say, okay, this is looking really nice, I didn't expect it. And some of it is looking, maybe, I don't know, so you're neutral to it, and some you just do not like. So just be aware of that, and it'll start becoming your thing. That becomes your style. Okay, enough lecture, back to painting. All right, so here now we are going to use two smaller brushes. So we will use our medium size brush, which in my case is the number 7, and then a small brush. I think you can also use a 4 if you're more comfortable, because we are painting a smaller area, but 4 to 7 is good. And then we have a small brush which could be a 1 or 2. And we are now going to create colors which are slightly thicker. So I'm wiping off one section because I'm going to now have to test the consistency of my paint a little bit. I'm going to hydrate 2 colors at a time. You can hydrate all of them also, because we are going to use all the colors here. And okay, so that looked a little weird. I'm using 2 palettes because there are some colors that are good in one and some colors that are used up. And I have one palette in which by some magic I have got 2 of the same cakes. I have got 2 raw umber cakes, and there is somebody out there in the world who has 2 viridian green cakes. I have to find that person and then we can just shake hands, because by then I'm going to have used this up completely. All right, so this is my clean palette. I may be taking,
Brush number 4 now, right?
sorry?
You're using brush number 4.
Yeah, the medium size brush I am. And I am taking a concentrated color. So concentrated color will not flow, and even when you move the brush around, you will see that though it is flowing, it is not becoming too light. It has to flow because it has to blend with another color. And then I'm going to create a blending in an order, two colors at a time. So I'm going from lemon yellow to gamboge. And right now I'm just making these 2 puddles. So I want you to see this again also. This is a different kind of blending that I'll do. Again, I'm going to hold the book at an angle. Dip my brush into the paint. Come here and check the consistency. And I'm going to do this reasonably fast. So I want you to just look over here. I'm going to paint the top half, or at least 1/3 in this paint, pulling the paint downward so that it is wet towards the bottom. Take the small brush now and take the second color and start blending this into the first color, but using vertical strokes like that. Make sure that the color is thick and you don't just have too much water. And then keep pulling the color down. If we manage the consistency of the paint and the size of the brush, this is cakewalk. And then you have to just let it dry. So here we have a blending of concentrated colors where you have kept the medium drier and the area is smaller as well. Now once this is done, I'm going to move from gamboge to orange. Let me do this one more time for you. Those yellows are very easy because they're almost the same shade. So you can't tell if the blend is good or just not up to mark. So I've hydrated these colors. I have some gamboge already. I'm applying that in the next inverted triangle because I want to leave some room in between for the previous color to dry completely. In this first one also I have to make sure that there isn't so much medium that the second color is not going to blend properly. Let's see what happens. There is a little extra medium. I think it's going to create a cloud there. Or maybe not. Okay, vertical strokes. Not bad. Not great, but not bad. So I have a few strokes visible also. Let's see if they blend. If not, then that's what we've got. So those of you who have 18 colors, you can go in this order. So come down one line, jump across, go up that line, jump across, come down that line. It doesn't matter which color you blend. I just want you to see that if you blend the neighbors, what it looks like, and it'll give you a nice chromatic blending also. If you have 24 colors, choose any of the colors in a particular area. If they are like these, just ignore the white and black because it's a different thing when you add white and black. But you can move from here to here to here. even in this palette, and it won't really matter. You can blend anything to anything. You don't need too much paint for this though. So just use enough for the tip to remain wet. And if you are comfortable, if you understand the consistency well, you don't even have to make these puddles over here to test whether your consistency is good. You can directly take paint from the cake if you feel like it. So while I'm telling you that here we have to blend in vertical strokes, there we have to blend in horizontal strokes in the washes. Remember that none of this is like a rule that's written on stone. If you feel that your blending requires you to move horizontally, by all means do that. I'm just going to leave you for a second to go and get some water. Okay, how's it going?
Good, good.
Good, okay.
Aditi, I'm usually struggling with the amount of water thing. So
Okay.
sometimes it's either too watery or like when I decrease the water, it stays as two separate colors.
So, okay, so tell me, when you are decreasing water, what are you doing? Are you dabbing it on the rag, or are you, how do you decrease water?
As in, I'm then the next time I'm just using less, like I'm just using, just touching it, like, and like, taking it off from the edge of the container and using very less. But
Mm-hmm.
then it's really like kind of not blending so well then.
So,
Like,
all right. So, till you get comfortable with how much water to use, use a rough sheet and make the
okay,
first stroke on that to see whether you have enough paint or not. Because it
okay,
will take
okay.
some time.
Yeah,
You don't know what you don't know.
yeah. I
When
have
you
to just
start-
practice, I
Yeah,
think.
so when you start, the saddest bit is when you take that and you start painting and you feel, oh, I wish I had made it a little wetter.
Yeah.
just to test out on a rough sheet, and sooner
Okay.
or later you'll start getting a feel of it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Most welcome. So this is an amazing thing, huh? Over time, just holding the brush, you will know whether you have too much water or too little water, or it's just, I don't know, there's like a very subtle weight change or just how it looks. From experience, you don't really need to do that. And also, secondly, is in case you do make a mark and it becomes too, you see it's too dry or too wet, just don't make the next stroke. Wipe your brush or wet your brush, take new paint, and before the first line dries or starts making too much of an impact, make another one with a little more water. So you can keep modulating your technique even while you are painting. Okay, let's try this.
Aditi, just have a look at what I've done, please.
Okay, have you shared a picture on the group?
Yeah, I'm showing you on the screen itself.
Okay, okay. Let me see that. Um, okay. Bona, could you also make your backdrop
Okay, my background is the problem.
unblurred? Yeah. Or share it on the group so that I can just put it on screen and we can talk.
Now,
It's easier. No, I don't. Yes, yes. Okay.
can you see it now?
Yes, I can. Yes. Okay. Can you hold it closer? Just hold it in front of your face and closer. Yeah. So the first one has blended fine. The second one, the color on top, I think dried a little faster, so you could add more liquid there. The third one, I think there was too much liquid in the orange, so it's flowed into the red. And the
Correct.
fourth one became dry before you added the last color.
Absolutely right. Correct. That's what even I felt. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so let's try using this technique in a practical project. So the one place that I use this often is in making pansies, and I'm going to show you how to draw this pansy as well. It's going to come in a circle about this size. So I'll make a light circle, which you may not be able to see clearly, but it's there. In the center of the circle, I will make an inverted triangle without the base. And from here, I will make a petal. That's almost like an oval shape with a projection on top. From the same point in the center, I will make two petals coming sideways. They're not exactly ovals, they're almost like rounded triangle shapes. And then I made this a little too small. From the right petal, I will draw another petal going along the other side. This is a horrible petal, it has to go a little beyond. So I'm going to just let it cover. And then there's another one coming on this side. Let me make another tiny one. I will be dissatisfied with this. Where do I make it? Yeah, so it's much larger. Okay, now I want to show you how I would do a blending technique in this. I'm going to start from the center, and here the blending is going to be with water, then with a gamboge, and then going into lemon yellow. So I have water here, which is also, it's like negative medium. I'm using the same brush. Let me turn this around and put lemon yellow first. Making vertical strokes in that wet so that I get that lemon yellow in. And I'm using the same brush right now because the area has increased. And then blend the gamboge into the back. So now I get a petal which is multicolored but uniformly blended, also with water. You want to see it again? Let me make it one more time. Lemon yellow. So the water at the tip will help this blend smoother, otherwise you just get streaks there. And now if I want to go one step further, while this paint is wet, I could also drop in a color. This here it might have dried. So bringing this drop technique in as well. Okay, do you want to try it? You don't have to make pansies, you can just make regular flowers also, which will look like this. Just start from the center and make petals like these. You can make 4 petals, 5 petals, whatever takes your fancy. And depending upon the size of the petal, you can choose the brush accordingly. For a very big petal, you can use a larger brush. I'm going to use even mediumer brush. This is number 4 for these petals. And this time let's try making an orange and red mix. So start from the center, pull this color outside, and then use crimson or scarlet and blend it out. You may hold it up so you can see what's happening here. Now if you want to, you could also use a thin brush in the smaller areas, and as you come to the larger area you can change your brush and make it fatter. That way you don't tax the small brush to paint a large area that it's not equipped to do very well, and then you won't get streaks. How's everyone doing? Is it coming okay? All right. Now, when you get time this week, your homework is going to be to finish the remaining of these triangles. And what you can do is first finish the triangles on the outside. So like these ones, the downward facing triangles on the top, upward facing triangles at the bottom. And when you're painting those, you can paint uh, the top first with a thin brush, like what I was saying about these petals, and then the bottom part with a slightly fatter brush. I'm going to show you how. I'm first blending with the thin brush, and then I will move to the fat brush. This is just, I feel instinctively I'll be able to control that better. So first I will join the two colors with the thin brush and then move to fatter and fatter brushes. Otherwise I feel there's going to be so much medium in the fat brush. If the two meet, I might just put too much paint in that small area.
Aditi, the brushes you're using are Camel itself?
Yeah, the S68.
Okay. And this is the same, these are the same ones you put on the group with the...
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the kit. You get a 66 also, which are, they have an orange top. They'll look like this. They're also pretty good, but in that, I guess I have a loyalty issue. If I like something and it works, I don't go looking out for other stuff. Yeah, wait a minute. No. Okay, so now let's move on to glazing. Let me explain what glazing is. So since watercolor is translucent, we are going to use it layer upon layer, and those layers are called glazes simply because they are not always the same shade. They can be multiple shades, and they interact with pigment that is below and later pigment that's going to come on top of it and create the effect that you want to. So it's all creating illusions of one layer upon another layer, and giving you depth, dimension, light, dark, shadows, and all of that. I guess with any kind of painting, it's not just watercolor. The excellence of an artist lies in how well they can convince you are seeing something that is not there. Okay, so like in last week's that wet on wet exercise, we created the illusion of a forest, or at least we attempted to, because we rely a lot on how our brain processes what we see, and it needs very little information to start figuring out what it might be, and starts making a judgment. So if you can come to a level where you don't really need to spell everything out, that is the, I guess, measure of your excellence. So when we are making glazes, we have broken down our subject into what we see as the different glazes are going to be in order to create that effect, that illusion. So in the beginning, we're not going to think about what I'm going to do here, so that's going to reflect over there. We're just going to follow very, very simple glazes. And over time, as you make these glazes, you are going to start becoming familiar with the effect of what happens when one color sits next to another color, on top of another color with a different consistency. It just will come to you the more you paint. So in today's exercise in glazing, we are only going to put one color on top of another color on top of another color mechanically. And then we are going to look at what we have come out with. Okay, so don't worry about how am I going to figure these out, how am I going to plan for the layers. You don't have to do that today, and maybe not for another 5 years also. So we will make a little composition with leaves on one corner, and we are going to repeatedly keep painting on top of that. And while one layer is drying, we will go back to some of the other stuff that we have done, so that we have something to do. Otherwise, we will mess around with our glazes. Alright, so in the space that I have here, I'm making another rectangle, making sure that it sits aligned to the tops of the earlier rectangles. And maybe I can bring it down to this level, because we need a slightly large space. Here's another tip: do not go to the edge of the page ever. Try to keep a little consistent border on the sides, on the tops, because it just looks a little better organized when you have a border to your work. Sorry, the sun over here is just playing havoc today. This texture, I'm going to have to do something for next time. Alright, so let's go ahead and make a wash first. You can use two similar colors this time. So big fat brush, because this is a large area. You can also go in for a number 12. I think this is my number 10. I'm going to do number 10 this time. And I'm making a wash with cerulean blue and also cobalt blue. So my cerulean blue is over here, and cobalt blue is a subtly different, slightly more mature blue, which I will put in the next palette. But you can just keep it in a small section next to your cerulean blue also. Oh, sorry, I've used ultramarine blue. Oh, never mind. Ultramarine is also fine. Or mixing the two is also fine. You just need one shade slightly light and one shade slightly dark. So right now we're just going to make a linear wash, meaning we'll go from one color to another color like we did the first wash. So here we go. You can use a slightly darker pigment this time. Just make sure that the paint is flowing well. And after about 1/3 of the way, you can just dip into your second color without changing the first, because they are so close to each other and they are going to blend anyway. It won't really matter. And so long as the bottom part of your wash is wet, you can take your time mixing your colors or blending them. to get the right shade, it won't matter. Now at this stage, if you feel you want to add a little more cerulean again, go ahead and add it. And then maybe some more cobalt blue. Just making washes, you could spend an entire day. Different colors from top to bottom. Then you can also introduce water in between so that you get a light shade somewhere in between. Even that's cool, like what we did over here. So what I found the best way to do art is to just experiment like 3-year-olds. And if you have a 3-year-old in the house, make them the guide or the leader of that activity, and you ask them, okay, what should we do now? And then they will come up with the most ridiculous things and follow that. Yeah, so Rachna, look at this. I too have that granular texture because of the ultramarine blue.
Right.
So that's just the nature of ultramarine blue. It does not sit flat. And also, you need a lot of encouragement for ultramarine blue to work, basically. I don't know what its problem is. So you will be digging and digging into the cake, and it just says, no, I don't want to work. And then that is the cake that gets used up fastest or most often. Not because you use more of it, because you need more of it, even for basic color.
Right. It's now nice how you treat them as living entities that are alive.
Yeah, I mean,
It helps build a connection with each of those cakes.
yes, and they all behave differently. So
Right.
I often felt that um, we can so easily anthropomorphize anything, and then we understand it better. Like when there are colors that do go very well together, they are best friends, and colors which are clashing just are not good. But there are some days when you need some psychedelic effects, and you start using these opposing colors, and you realize that we attach a lot of emotion to even things that colors are doing. So when we say psychedelic, that color combination is often very chaotic. And chaos is often a result of opposite elements coming together and requiring to stay within a small space. So you see how easily we can take something as a word and employ that with just colors, which otherwise have no connection, but we can come up with solutions quite easily with that. All right, now while our glaze or base color for the glazing is drying, I want to go back into this multicolor wash and make a partition there. And I'm going to very carefully paint the same thing again. The same colors, the same kind of wash, because the second time round now these pigments are going to brighten up the shades, and I want to experiment and see how much they will brighten. So the colors have to be about the same. They are definitely going to have dried by now, or you can make another batch, that's fine. More or less the same is also good. And let's go over just part of this. So if it so happens that your first wash is not peeling, you're not happy with it, you can always come back and make a second layer on top of it and fix the stuff that you feel needs fixing. So if your blend has not been even or it's dried up, just let the whole thing dry. Don't go and correct anything. Let it dry, let it sit down, and then you can go back in, make another layer, and some parts of the layer below will the pigment will get dislodged and come and merge with the new color, so you start seeing a brightened shade of the same color combinations. Now even this right now it's looking pretty bright. This is also going to settle and become lighter. All right, okay Deepika, I'll see you next week. This is another quote. Now, if your glazed square has dried up, we will use the same colors, this time a little concentrated. And you won't even have to make them concentrated because if you're sitting under a fan, this will have dried. All right, Aarti, I will see you next week. Okay, we still have 5 minutes. I might take 5 minutes more, but if you need to leave at exactly the time the class ends, please feel free to. I will share the recording maybe later today. There isn't too much. I just want to show you a little bit of the glazing. So what we'll do now is from all sides, we will draw some leaves going inward. So draw a stalk and paint this. Now when you draw the stalk, if you sense that the color is not, the line is not sharp, that means your paint is probably still wet. So stop at that point, let the paint dry. You could check if the paint is dried on the top. So I'm just making small leaves from all the sides, coming inward towards the center, but not too large, not into the center. And then I will turn the book around because I'm more comfortable painting this way, and also the book ends away, so my lines are going to look really weird. So you can paint this either using cerulean blue or what is the other wash? Cobalt blue. But the same consistency, not very thick paint at this stage. So slightly thicker than wash consistency. So you get only light shades here, not very dark colors. It almost looks like they are shadows of leaves falling onto this. and you can also overlap. So this becomes the second layer and also our first glaze onto the wash.
Aditi, it will take a lot of practice to get your wash evenly, right?
Um,
But streaks are across my washes,
yeah, that's fine. You don't really need an even wash, honestly.
Okay.
Very few places you will need an even wash, or even coloring for that matter. You don't need a flat color with watercolor.
That's, I think, with time you will build up your expertise, like the way you have done.
Yeah, it'll happen in time. But also for the application, you think, okay, where am I going to use that even colored wash? You spend like 50 hours practicing so that you get all the colors even, and then say you're doing landscape or something, you need the streaks, or the streaks are going to be fine, and you might have been able to make that wash after your like third attempt. So all those 50 hours for something that you're not going to use too much of, I don't think is necessary.
I think it's the angle of the brush at which you hold your brush. We are so used to hold it, like a pencil.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's what I have to develop. So I'm
Yeah.
noticing the brush streaks are more there.
Yes, yes. That's also the logic is very simple. When the brush comes in contact with a larger surface area, more pigments are taken and they are spread out. When it's just concentrated, only a few pigments are taken around, and obviously that's going to cause it to dry faster and therefore the streaks.
Absolutely right. Thank you.
Okay, now for once these have dried, the second layer will dry much quicker. And as you can see, there are a whole lot of effects happening here. This happens because my paint was too wet. Now, since we are using the same paint as we did the wash with, all this is wet paint that lies on the surface a little too long, and then it puddles up in one corner and dries up as a puddle, so that all around the edge of the puddle you get this dark circle or all the dark pigment. This is very common. This is called a cloud, and this is very common if you have too much water. So you will have, it's like physics, you have this whole droplet of water, and as it starts drying, the water starts reducing, but the water doesn't spread outward. The pigments go and settle down along the edge of the water just because of gravity, and then as the water goes, you have no water, and all the pigment that has just gone and slid down the sides along the edges. So if you feel that you have too much water and it has, let's say, ballooned up like that, you can just pick it up with the tip of the brush. You will reduce a little bit of the pigment, but at least that cloud will not happen. For me, at this point, the cloud doesn't matter because we are going to then create a third layer in this with much more concentrated color. And here we can use a bunch of different shades. I want to use cerulean as well, and I want to use burnt sienna and maybe even burnt umber. And since this is just an experiment, we are just going to see how these colors interact with each other when they are glazed. I'm using two separate brushes, one thin brush for cerulean blue and a slightly fatter brush for the burnt sienna, but I don't mean for them to blend. Now the in-between spaces is where I can add the thicker paint. Now we've done this last time. When you want to draw a thin line, hold the brush or move the brush in the same direction as the line. So this is the final layer of this picture. And I have created a sense of depth by adding a glaze below. Technically speaking, even this layer is a glaze, but it is more concentrated color. So you might not be able to see through it as easily or as clearly as you can see through the earlier two shades. But behind these also, there you will feel that there is a shadow of the earlier colors. When I make leaves, I like to put a little stalk on them so that they don't come and attach to the stem directly. They look very stubby otherwise. This creates a nice negative space around them. So when you're glazing, you'll notice that the colors change. Your cerulean blue will look slightly deeper, but your burnt sienna will not look as brown as it does. It almost looks like a deeper shade of brown. And maybe to some extent even like a burnt umber. And these layers are now giving a sense of depth. You start seeing the colors that are brighter in the foreground, the colors that are wispy and misty a little bit in the background. And for me at least, this texture almost makes it look like there's a forest in the background. I didn't intend it, it just happened that way. And these things are the best when painting with watercolor. Anything can happen. Expect the unexpected and make the unexpected work. Alright, so this is all for today. And to keep you busy through the week, you can practice all of these. Maybe you can cut some slivers of paper and paint washes, convert them into glazed exercises like that, and use them as bookmarks, gift cards, or whatever. You can also try these on different color types of flowers and see how that works for you. And of course, we have this wet on wet also. You can do this on this, you can do this on this, even this to some extent can be done on the washes. And next week, we will take on negative painting. So I'm going to write that over here anyway. Otherwise, I will forget.